So many believers with besetting sins in their life, and they think that literally that's the way it's just always going to be. So content with slavery. Instead of going to their knees and crying out to God until they're delivered from that sin. Pastors, we preach and we preach and we preach and we preach and we preach, but where is the demonstration of power? Yes, men are changed through preaching, but have you ever seen men changed through your prayer life? Have you ever silently labeled a few men that you were going to focus your prayer life upon and hit your knees and fought and wrestled until Christ is formed in them and you saw a maturity and a glow and a life that was absolutely unexplainable apart from the power of the living God? Most ministers today have sold their ministry to Fifth Avenue and to marketing and to culturally sensitive business models of church. It's absolutely pathetic, but don't sell your ministry to mere scholarship. You are a man of God. That would suppose that you dwell with Him in secret prayer. Secret prayer. Secret prayer. Is the presence of God a reality in your life? Even that statement set some of you trembling and afraid. Will He go off on us? Is He really not of our camp? Is He a little bit too, given to experience? Again, go back and read those old books of yours. Find those men. Oh, brothers, we are more than administrators. We are more than mere scholars. We are men who dwell in the presence of the Most High. Every conflict in your life, every brokenness in your body has one purpose. It's to send you to your knees. Every conflict, every battle. Today, there's no battle fought in this pulpit. It was fought this morning at 5 o'clock. It's not fought here. It's fought in prayer. It's won in prayer. The thing is done in prayer. The thing is done in prayer. I want you to look for a moment. Let's just go with me to Luke 18. Verse 1. Now He was telling them a parable to show them that at all times they ought to pray and not to lose heart. Do you know, I hear it very common today, even among ministers. They say, well, I don't really have a specific time of prayer. I just kind of pray all the time. I do not believe them. Because I have learned that practicing the presence of God and practicing prayer, it is a learned discipline. It comes from tarrying with your God. What else would you want to do? What other greater privilege has been granted you than to tarry with God? To worship Him. To cry out to Him. To commune with Him. And you say, we are to pray all the time, but how do we learn to practice the presence of God? How do we learn to pray all the time? I submit to you, it is by the discipline of a separated prayer life. Of getting up in the morning, early, before day. And I have come to believe that in fighting this battle of piety, one of the best things for me to do is this: to discover what my flesh most hates and do that first, before I'm weakened or distracted. To get up in the morning, and I'll tell you this, my flesh hates prayer more than Bible study. Because Bible study can actually be used for my glory. I can know more than others. I can speak better than others. If I study well, I'll be able to speak at conferences. But no one will know about my life of prayer. I will gain nothing from men, but I will gain much from God. My flesh hates prayer. Another thing just for you young ministers, we are never to be anxious. It's funny to me that men who believe so much in the sovereignty of God would actually be anxious. But I wake up sometimes in the morning anxious. The devil uses those things as distractions. It may be some imaginary thing causing me anxiety. It may be just a little problem, but it begins to eat at my mind. So the first thing in the morning, what do? Philippians 4. I'm anxious for nothing. So what must I do? Take that anxious thought, whatever it is, and go to God with it immediately. And clear my mind of all anxiety. Now I stand before a sovereign God, and I'm fully convinced of it. And then pray. Pray. Pray for what? Pray for everything. For everything. Everything. Brothers, there is a sense of being carried in preaching, where you almost, it seems as though you don't even know what direction you're being drug into. Now again, not to say we're not to be expositors. We need to be better expositors. I need to be a better expositor. But you can have every T crossed, every I dotted, and there's no power. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen men wax eloquently, and yet your soul was not moved. Nothing was dealt with in regard to your conscience. He taught a parable specifically to let men know that they should always pray. A parable is built around this with one purpose, that you would always pray. And the Lord is not here preaching something He did not practice. The incarnate God was a man of prayer. Isn't it amazing that no one ever walked up to Jesus and said, Jesus, teach us to preach? They didn't say, Jesus, teach us to walk on water. But they did say, Lord, teach us to pray. So many people said, oh, if I could do anything, I would see Paul preaching on Mars Hill. If I could do anything, I would see my Lord interceding. I would see my Lord interceding. John Calvin said that the heart of man was an idol factory. We can make scholarship an idol. We can make expository preaching an idol. Although these things are things to be cherished, compared to Him, they're rubbish. The presence of Christ, the power of Christ. Then he says, in verse 2, he says, in a certain city there was a judge who did not fear God and did not respect man. Now what are we seeing here? He is putting before us a person who is the antitype of God. I mean, compared to God, He is completely at the opposite end of the spectrum, isn't He? He doesn't fear God. He doesn't respect man. There's no virtue in Him. You can just picture this man, a greedy, miserly man with a narrow spirit and a small heart who's consumed by self and self-promotion. And there was a widow in that city. Now, please understand, widows at that time, like still in some places in the third world, is the most destitute, helpless person on the face of the earth. There's no one as destitute as she except for maybe her child. No help, no economic power, no social power, no political power, no power whatsoever. If she dies in the street, the only word of the public will be, how do we get her body from us? How do we remove her to some place where we no longer have to see her rotting corpse? She has nothing. Then it says, there was a widow in that city, and she kept coming to him, saying, give me legal protection from my opponent. For a while he was unwilling, but afterward he said to himself, even though I do not fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow bothers me, I will give her legal protection. Otherwise, by continually coming, she will wear me out. Literally, she will hit me under the eye. It's the type of word used when two boxers are fighting and one beats the other half to death and the one is just bruised. This woman is tenacious. Absolutely tenacious. And the only reason that this miserly, horrid man gives in to her is because she keeps coming, she keeps coming, she keeps coming. He can't take it anymore. She wrestles with him. Now, verse 6, and the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge said. Now, He's going to tell us exactly what all this parable is about. So many times people get confused in parables because they look for meaning absolutely everywhere in the parable. They find little minute things and nuances. But a parable, I believe, although it can teach many things, is always given to drive home one central truth. And He's going to reveal that to us right now. He says, and the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge said. Now what did He say? He says, this is what I'm wanting you to learn about your Christian life, about prayer. Listen to what the unrighteous judge said. Listen to him. Because this widow bothers me, I will give her legal protection. Otherwise, by continually coming, she will wear me out. And then he goes on in verse 7, now will not God bring about justice for His elect, who cry to Him day and night, and will He delay long over them? The one thing among many that I appreciate about Charles Spurgeon, he was solidly, as you would put it today, either sovereign grace, Reformed, 1689, he was right there in the middle. But when Spurgeon came to a text, he just preached the text. Amen. And he did not try to reconcile it with some other doctrine in order to supposedly protect that doctrine. It's like trying to protect our doctrine from the Scriptures. Listen, I believe that God is absolutely sovereign over absolutely everything, and He decreed it before the very foundation of the earth. And that has gotten me in more problems, that belief, than any other thing. But I know it is scriptural, and yet at the same time, I know I have not because I ask not. And I cannot explain it. And I have not been called to explain it. Along with so many other great doctrines of Scripture.